2. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Julio Godinez, and welcome to today's Security Boulevard webinar, Cybersecurity Mayhem, 2021 Threats and What to Expect Next, brought to you by Sonatype. We have a great webinar for you today, but before we get started, I need to go through some housekeeping announcements. Today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any part of the webinar, you will be able to access the recording for on-demand viewing. We will be sending out a link to access the webinar on demand, or you can visit securityboulevard.com/webinars. We want to hear from you, so please feel free to send in questions at any time throughout the program by using the Q&A tab. We also encourage discussion by using the chat tab, so let us know your thoughts or just say a quick hello. Finally, stick around until the end because we are doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so stay tuned to see if you're a winner. And finally, joining me today is Sharma, security researcher at Sonatype, and Juan Aguirre, security researcher also at Sonatype. And with that, I'm going to put myself on mute, turn off my camera, and let you begin.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julio. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I hope you're well rested from the long weekends. Axe here and with me at Juan. So let's start with giving you a roundup of some fun cyber attacks news. Is Mickey Mouse wax? The European Union says so. Recently, private key, which is to sign EU green passport certificates, was compromised. And we did this ourselves too. Just finding all these different certificates, some for Mickey Mouse, SpongeBob, etc. When you scan them, like it's recognized by the official app. And interestingly, it didn't take dark web actors long to start selling these passports to phones. So kind of a fun thing, but also very scary. Another thing
It was real fun seeing.
what was that?
That this was real fun to see. It's
Yeah,
always fun with stuff like this, entertaining.
it's just amazing how like a joke turns into like monetary incentive on, like, as we've seen time and time again. So yeah. And I think did you see the GoDaddy breach, Juan? Like, so many, it was, the breach itself stemmed from a compromised password, but I think like up to 1.2 million WordPress customers were affected. And yeah,
That's a whole lot. There's a lot of customers, a lot of people that use WordPress and even GoDaddy. So that's a huge impact. They had 1.2 million is really big.
yeah, I've known people, for them, GoDaddy is their favorite registrar. No comments on that. But yes, as you can see in this breach, like SFTP, usernames, passwords, private key was exposed, and up to 1.2 million email addresses. I think though, breaches happen all the time. I think what kind of set this one a bit apart was it was disclosed by an SEC filing. And it says like this happened in September, and in November we're hearing about it. I think that kind of ruffled some feathers.
Yes, not the most transparent. Very delicate when it comes to user data.
Yeah.
So it's always hard.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the fun stuff. Let's talk about money. $3 million stolen in crypto.
What a number, 3 million. The attackers are just going out. They know where the money is. That they have the skills. So that's what they need to do. They go after the crypto.
No, but the funny thing on with this one is it happened because of one malicious commit on GitHub. Okay, like there's this crypto launchpad Miso platform from SushiSwap, so you can launch your own coins or tokens, I should say, not coin, using this launchpad. So I can start an Axe coin, like an NFT token. But the thing is, the attacker sort of made a malicious commit which got committed, like it got approved, and it made its way to the front end of this auction platform. So all the funds collected for this automobile auction, about 865 Ethereum, which is $3 million, it was sent to the attacker's wallet.
That's clever. How does that make it approved? I have no idea.
Well, they say that the attacker was sort of an insider or a contractor who was, it seems, not properly vetted. So this is more of an inside risk, I would say, but still, amazing. Well, the good news is they did manage to recover the funds through some negotiation with the attacker, but this is a lesson for everyone.
A lesson to be learned.
Now, that was big to you. Let's look at this: $611 million stolen. This attack happened sometime like this year, in August this year. So, like Poly Network, right? Again, one of the biggest DeFi platforms, right? Because of a security vulnerability, $611 million. Just taken away by the attackers from their pool.
Again, in the DeFi space, so it seems like most vulnerable spaces for crypto are being, tokens, because they can be less secure. Anybody can just launch the token, and DeFi is definitely a popular place right now to
Yeah,
attack.
I think we're going to see a lot more of these in the next few days. One funny thing, I just you also saw like when when the $600 million attack happened, in the attacker's wallet, like people were posting tips, like other cyber criminals were sort of guiding the threat actors how to launder money. That my daughter needs tuition, hint hint, this is the wallet address, or like just giving these funny ideas.
That's crazy. They were helping the attackers launder the money, and in exchange, they were actually getting
Yeah.
kind of like rewarded for their tips.
Well, speaking of reward, the attacker who did this, themselves got like 500,000 buck bounty. That was the negotiation, but they returned the rest of the funds. So,
Yeah, well, that's a good thing when you get to pick your own bounty amount, right?
yeah. So let's kind of jump to the. So I did want to mention our focus for today would be a little bit more on supply chain attacks, because Juan and I have time and time again seen these. So yeah, it's something we specialize in, and we'd like to talk about these. So how about this malware that we found on NPM, Juan?
Yes, this was really interesting to come across. Started impersonating real packages, right? They were trying to copycat the code, trying to impersonate it, but the twist was that it actually had malware in it to do some crypto mining, which, again, in the crypto space, that seems to be where it's at.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, as this like progress, right? Like for this first event happened like on October 20th, around that time. But these were just like three, randomly named packages: Glow, Clown, OK, HSA, whatever, and these imitated UA-parser-js, which is a very popular library. But what happened was, like days later, UA-parser-js, the official package itself, gets hijacked. And this is not a small package. It's used by Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, like everyone. Okay, and like attackers launched the same crypto miners that we had seen in the previous attack that Sonatype had identified. And then this particular hijack, though, like the hijack versions also dropped like DLLs, which stole credentials from over 100 Windows apps. And obviously, we are not going to hear about the full impact of this breach. The full scope is yet to be determined, but some companies, including JetBrains, they did disclose some impact that, hey, if you build test cases, your test case framework was using UA-parser-js. So, reset your credentials.
Yeah, the thing with these attacks is that usually start seeing the impact afterwards. They slowly start to pile up, and you start seeing slowly the real impact that all this had.
And like, how do you measure it, right? Because we don't know how many people like cloned it, forked it, right? Like, even if it was removed, even if the hijack versions were removed.
Yeah, it's really hard to know.
Yeah, so this didn't stop here. I mean, should we just, I guess, skip to the timeline maybe to save time? But this whole series of attacks like kept happening. So, starting with the crypto mining packages we found, and the same strand was found in the hijack UA-parser-js library used by many companies. And then we found more no-blocks malware. Like all of this malware, like like it seems like linked, almost like pointing towards the idea that the threat actors are like linked or connected, because we found like these fake no-blocks proxy packages, right? They imitate the official noblocks.js library, which is a Roblox API wrapper. So if you play, Roblox games, all that, this is the API for that. And these packages, just notice the difference. The malicious package is called noblocks.js-proxies. The official mirror of the package, or well, I should say the mirror of the official package, has a D at the end. So this is how attackers do it, right, Juan? Like, tell me more about it, because I think you analyzed this one.
Yeah, it's very easy to just typo a fat finger the wrong letter, and that easily you can be infected. It's telling some ransomware. They had some obfuscation in there, but ultimately their goal was to get some ransomware on your system and steal your credentials, right? They want to steal information. So we saw a lot of this. This kept coming up, many packages. It wasn't just one, right? It kept coming up.
I think with this one though, I think it's the first time we've ever seen ransomware in NPM.
Yes, that was really interesting. It was bringing ransomware. We hadn't really come across this, and then there was a doubt, which is this ransomware? Are they after actual payday, or is it just a prank? Because it also had a prank aspect to it. So
Yeah, and it came at around like Halloween time. So okay, this doesn't stop. I mean, this craziness unfolds. Official COA library gets hijacked too. Again, very popular library, 9 million weekly downloads. Okay, like that tells you it's being used by many development tools built by leading companies. Hours later, RC library, again very popular, millions of weekly downloads, itself gets hijacked. Now these ones do not install crypto miners, but they have the same sort of password stealing DLLs we've seen in previous attacks. Once again, just based on the code we have seen, it looks very much linked that it's the same threat actor doing these things, compromising NPM accounts. And I think, Juan, like these three questions that you raised, I think they're very crucial to the topic.
yeah, it's specifically, I mean, how are they choosing the targets? Because they just keep hijacking these accounts. So specifically, how are they doing it? How are they compromising the accounts? They seem to be targeting the correct ones because they're all popular, right? They don't just have one or two downloads. They have many hundreds and some even thousands. So they're definitely onto something, right?
Yeah, I mean, for now, I think NPM is advising developers and package publishers to use two-factor, but let's see how this all unfolds. Anyway, the no-block saga continues. After our discovery in November 16, the register released a report, more such packages found. And if we just go over this timeline quickly, this is what I want to show you. Like October 20th, it all started with our report. Within a week, the official library gets hijacked. Uh, we have more fake like no blocks typo squads coming. Um, this was interesting. October 29th. Did you see that one? That little warning?
I did. I came across that in our blog. We did a
Yeah.
great blog article. I invite everyone here on our webinar to go check it out, blog.sonatype.com. And one of the supposedly, they claim to be one of the authors of the malware. They came on our blog and left us a nice message, kind of taunting us in a way. So that was fun. That's always fun. I mean, does that mean I made it? Am I a true security professional now, Ax? What do you think?
I don't know, man. I mean, I think we're getting there because I think that person like also, yeah, like consistently is like publishing these packages. And I think you discovered another three today. Fast forward to 29th, which is today. So where did you see that one?
That's right. It just kept coming up on npm. Also, some of the maintainers of the actual packages have reached out to us, and they send us a message. They let us know. We look into it, and we work with npm to get those taken down.
Wonderful. Thanks for jumping on that. Crazy, just like hours before our webinar. So yeah, more similar stuff going on in the land of open source security. So PyPI or PyPI, have been corrected about that. They removed MITM proxy 2. Now here's the thing about open source software, right? Anybody can fork anything, and obviously that's fine. But this MITM proxy 2 was an exact replica of the official MITM proxy, which is heavily downloaded. But this one had security safeguards removed from it, so that effectively introduced a security vulnerability. Now, the maintainer behind MITM proxy, he's pissed because naturally when somebody says, I mean, if you're a developer, you see some package like MIT Proxy 2, you'll think that's the latest version. So you'll get that. And that kind of confusion, you're inadvertently introducing security vulnerabilities in your code. So I think that was an interesting debate one.
Yeah, I mean, open source package management is a complicated thing to do. You really have to be on top of your game. You have to do it. And if you don't know what your open source dependencies are bringing into your software, you could easily bring in something like this with just a simple commit to inject a remote code execution vulnerability. So that just brings a little backdoor in there, and it's like that you're infected.
Very true. So I want to brush past this a bit quick. I mean, it's very interesting, but I mean, just to be so short on time. So, I mean, some of you may have heard about Trojan Source vulnerabilities, how we can introduce invisible vulnerabilities in your code. So if you're a security professional reviewing code or a security researcher, to the naked eye, a piece of code may not look malicious at all, right? It may make sense logically and otherwise. But say just by introducing like funny characters, like a right to left character, I can basically reverse the direction of code. I can do funky things with homoglyphs or two characters which look the same but they're not the same. So one example, I mean, this was all dubbed as a Trojan source attack, but yeah, so this is, you have, it looks like this code block is commented, but because of the right to left encoding, it'll actually flip around, and the comment is only like the whole sentence is not commented. So like the part after that will still execute. Now, if you were reading this code in an IDE, depending on your skills, you may not be able to spot it, but obviously your compiler may run the code like differently. So that's the trick. And just what I mentioned, homoglyphs, it's the same idea, right? Like two characters. I mean, if you're a non-native English speaker, you might be also aware of this, right? Like, say, Greek alphabet and some English, like Cyrillic script, I should say, Cyrillic script letters and Latin, may look similar, but they're not. They're a different character. They are different character code inside the encoding, like Unicode, whatever. So you could have like two functions that may be, it looks like they're the same names, but they're
It
different.
looks like exactly the same. I can't tell the difference from the H.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine your program as these like in different parts. So that was also another example of Trojan source, but I find this example more interesting, Juan, because
This
this
is a real cool one.
yeah, it came out like days after Trojan source. Actually, it was discovered around the same time, but that one got pressed first and this one. So there's an invisible backdoor in this code. Can anybody spot it? I wish I could give you all like 5 minutes, but I mean,
Let's see our chat. Did anybody quickly see it in there? To be honest, when I ran through this, I had to look at the comment below it. It kind of said, "Oh, go back and check this out." And once you go back and you see that, that function definition, you see that const, you see that timeout, you're like, wait, there's a comma there.
Look at that. Like, yeah, exactly. Like to a naked eye. I mean, this is like an invisible variable, right? It could be called like, I don't know, foo or bar. And that invisible character that's being used as a variable, and it completely changes the meaning. So, yeah, I mean, this is how you can like sort of introduce like invisible backdoors, like change the logic of the program. The full details I wrote in the article, what it's exactly doing. I mean, in the moment, I'm not sure, actually, I forget, but like this kind of stuff, invisible characters. Similarly, homoglyphs, but this time to alter the logic. So those of you who are programmers, this is a not equal to sign, but actually that exclamation mark is not really an exclamation mark. It's what's called an alveolar click. So basically your compiler will almost like ignore it. And instead of saying, instead of evaluating if the environment is not prod, it'll basically set environment to prod, completely changes the logic.
This is a real cool one. I really enjoyed reading about the Trojan sources, the Trojan vulnerabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just, we'll see how this all unfolds. Like, if anybody has spotted this yet or hasn't been exploited, we haven't seen it, but well, interesting.
It's really...
So moving on to repo jacking and chainjacking. This was spotted in 2019, and in 2021, Checkmarx and Intezer did a combined report kind of assessing the impact of this. So essentially what it is, anybody can change their GitHub username, right? You can have multiple repositories published on your GitHub username. And GitHub always like warns you that, we will not set up redirects from your old profile, but they do redirect your repositories. So yeah, I mean, some links will get redirected. Now, that's all fine, but what happens when somebody else claims your GitHub username? And what happens to Go packages? Because the name of for those of you who are Go programmers, the name of the Go package is itself, linked to a Git repository, right? One, like the list of dependencies, they're like the Git links itself.
Yeah, this is real interesting, because then now that once orphaned, name user space out there is now claimed again. So does all that data get reassigned to it? Do they now have the power over it?
Exactly. So Integer made an interesting point that basically this is how people can hijack versions, right? Like chainjacking. I mean, they can publish malicious versions of a Go package by claiming somebody's abandoned username. Now, GitHub has introduced what they call a popular repository namespace retirement. So I think if your repository has like, I think over 100 clones and you change your username, it'll sort of prevent this kind of attack. But very interesting, regardless, to see. Uh, Apache path traversal bug. I think you saw this. This was like, big news again and again that Apache is like what it dominates like 25% of market share when it comes to web servers. And this particular vulnerability, which is path traversal, it was found to impact HTTP server. It's a regression bug itself. So it means, ironically, somebody was trying to fix path traversal and they introduced another path traversal. It wasn't actively exploited 0 day, so it was found only after it had been exploited. And interestingly, this bug also doubled as remote code execution, not just directory traversal. And I guess the best part is the fix for this was still not complete, so they had to issue yet another fix.
That's really interesting. We seem to see that a lot sometimes,
Yeah.
and it's security is hard, and so is development. So when it comes to patching a vulnerability, there's not just one way to do it, and you could end up introducing a second one or not completely fixing it because there's use cases, different use cases, border cases, and you don't always take that into account, and it ends up in this. You need an emergency patch for a bypass for the thing you just patched.
Yeah, I mean, this was quite, I don't know, like the right word for it, but just, I think, like, yeah, the drama carried on for a whole week. Good lesson regardless. So let's shift towards some popular supply chain attacks. I'll just brush past these quick. Just most of you are already familiar with this. I think Kaseya incident, right? Ransomware operation are evil exploited zeroed in Kaseya MSP's system. So Kaseya is a managed services provider, and one of their IT management tools were breached due to a 0 day, which they claim was being fixed at the same time. And around 1,500 businesses were affected by this. That's the power of supply chain attacks. One source compromised, and like thousands or millions of parties can be impacted. And the ransomware group demanded $70 million ransom, but I mean, I don't know how Kaseya did not pay it. Possibly either the governments intervened, or they somehow acquired a universal decryptor. Interesting indeed. Uh,
That's interesting. Who,
yeah,
who has that capability? I mean, it's interesting to think of universal decryptor. That's got to be real powerful. And why
it's
did
actually it's becoming not unheard of. I'm not a ransomware expert. I don't consider myself one, but I mean, I've seen a lot of like it has been cited for a universal decryptor. So it seems like the groups do make a fallback or something in their code.
not?
So another example is ClickStudio's Enterprise Password Manager. Yep, all of you use password managers to store your password. This one's used by Fortune 500 companies. Again, breach via forged update, just like SolarWinds. And yeah, so the in-place upgrade mechanism was compromised here, and that's what the attackers used to deliver this Moser Pass malware. But I mean, it didn't quite stop there. Like breached, basically people who were impacted by this, they began receiving phishing emails 1 week later with new malware version. And I guess the one interesting aspect of this attack is like sort of social engineering, that this DLL, like it has, when we opened up for analyzing it, it has like links to a fake CDN. So you may not be able to tell if this is the real CDN or not, but like it's set up by the attacker. There were some user manuals with links to this. Just like there's a social engineering aspect to this as well.
We don't see that too often. We don't come across it in our day to day, but it does seem to be a very popular channel to distribute malware. Just that, just phishing in general. That's very common. So you got to be real careful.
Yeah, I think some employees will always sort of fall for it, right? That's why you need like cyber security awareness trainings. I've seen this in my SOC time too. Somebody always clicks the link.
Oh yeah, it's always fun to see also the internal tests they do as aware. It's, that the internal, your own company, they send you the phishing, then you get to see if you did fall for it or not.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll skip this one. I think everyone knows CETA supply chain attack. If you're a frequent flyer, I'm pretty sure you've been breached. SolarWinds, everybody knows. So let's just give a quick overview on of the 3 points in a supply chain attack. This is sort of a rough criteria, but when we say like a software supply chain attack, I mean, every software, right, it has an upstream, it has a midstream, and a downstream. And basically all of this is referring to different aspects of a software development lifecycle. So when we say an upstream compromise, right, like it just means where your dependencies are, where your code is, where your IDE is sort of that aspect. Midstream can be like, say, your CI/CD tooling, Jenkins scripts, which are building your code, or the containers, that kind of breach. And then downstream impacts. I mean, it's almost obvious. Any supply chain attack will lead to a downstream impact. So yeah, I mean, we have spoken about this several times, but I mean, there's a lot of incentive for attackers to target open source components specifically for supply chain attacks. Like GitHub alone has 100 million repositories, right? Anything published there, it gets sort of mirrored, replicated, published further to NPM, PyPipe, Sonatype, Maven Central, etc. So open source, due to its vast adoption rate and low barriers to entry, it's great, it's welcoming. But anything that's open to the public is also open to adversaries, and threat actors know this very well. That's why we've been seeing so many typo spotting attacks and dependency hijacking, which we'll get into shortly.
That's right. I mean, that's open source is great. Everybody has access to it, but that's the thing. Like you just said, everybody has access to it, including adversaries. So it's easy for them to play around with it and try to abuse it.
Yeah, just making sure, Juan, can you make sure we go down questions so far? So I'm going to brush through a few slides.
Yeah, we got a couple questions here.
All right, I'll time this accordingly then. So everyone heard the CodeCop incident, right? I mean, this was interesting. April 15, CodeCop, which is it's a software testing tool. And yeah, it's used by thousands of open source projects to run test cases and stuff. So they disclosed the supply chain incident. It lasted 2 months. It went undetected, and hundreds of customer networks were reportedly breached from it. You can see it's used by like many. There's like almost 10,000 results on GrabApp alone. So CodeCop was running a flawed Docker image creation process, which sort of exposed credentials to its this bash script, which is used by all these tools. So attackers were able to alter this bash script hosted on codecop.io to make it send the stuff it was collecting to them, not to CodeCop. Okay, so over a 2-month period, all these customers, there's the timeline, beautiful. All these customers, their environment variables were sent to the attackers. All the drama started January 31st, and we kept hearing about these advisories like HashiCorp's private key being exposed, Twilio's private repositories cloned, Rapid7, Monday.com. And I think on Mercari had it the worst, right?
Oh yes, that was the e-commerce giant, and all they were really affected by this is just CodeCop is very popularly used, and they had 17,000, over 17,000, just a little bit over 17,000 records of them, right?
Well,
that was huge.
Yeah, like Mercari is a big, e-commerce giant, at least in Japan. I think they also do business in the US. But like 17,000 records, what were they doing in Mercari's GitHub repo, even if they were private? Like, I'm just like, why? This was not a systems breach. It was lifted from their GitHub if you read their advisory.
Yeah, a lot of leaks sometimes also are not necessarily like huge breaches like this, but they can start with just a simple credential leak, right? Whether it be in a container or something as simple as they were in a GitHub repository. Somebody committed them, they were up there, forgotten about, and they're still good.
Maybe just test data, using production data in tests, maybe a subset of it. Who knows?
That's a real issue, though, right?
Yeah. So let's dive into malware infiltrating OSS repos. We've actually seen this. I'm going to skip because this is like from last year or yeah, not too recent now, but we've seen like a lot of these packages, which they imitate real packages like Twilio, Discord, and they like really just open reverse shells and stuff. You can actually read like a some of all these in a blog post we compiled on Sonatype blog. So it's got like, yeah, a single post going over this. However, we did publish a blog today on blog.sonatype.com, just going into this yet another typo squad. Somebody published to PyPy. Yeah, it's called Bota3. Very poor attempt at typo squatting Bota3 because Amazon AWS SDK. And yeah, it had like a lot of just obfuscated code, XOR encrypted, and yeah, essentially just connecting to a command and control server, requesting commands, all sorts of capabilities, data exfiltration, and yeah, remote surveillance.
This is really fun. I love working on the malware part of this. When when new malware comes in and we get to look at it, that's one of the things I enjoy the most. And a lot of it is also thanks to our release integrity team. They do a great job. They have a great automation to catch packages that constantly come
Yeah,
out.
so just for the audience, like I think release integrity refers to our automated malware detection systems. They flag any like suspicious packages or so, and then that's when we start analyzing them. Nice. So let's go over dependency confusion because I think that's kind of been a novel theme this year. We've seen again and again. So, okay.
This had a big impact, and this kind of came out. It was slowly coming out, slowly something we kind of started seeing something. Ask was on the inside track there. He had some information there, but it just blew up. One day it kind of just huge blew up.
Yeah, so I mean, as Juan mentioned, release integrity, our automated malware detection system, it started flagging things in like July 2020, and these packages were called like say PayPal Express on npm, right? And we'll see like many of these packages, something with Apple in it, PayPal, Microsoft, and I was seeing like this was being published by Alex Berzon, who's a known security researcher. I mean, he had a good profile, so I'm like, okay, this is not a threat actor. Are they doing some security testing, pen testing? So I reached out to the person, and he's like, yes, this is part of an ethical research. We at Sonatype made sure that this was being discussed. It was part of a coordinated disclosure. Fast forward to February 9th. Now, all these months we kept, making sure these packages were being recorded in our research, but obviously we couldn't disclose it because there was pending coordinated disclosure. So February 9th, when Alex releases his blog, that how he hacked into like 35 big tech companies, Apple, Microsoft, PayPal, others, by using this technique, dependency confusion. I mean, this was like an aha moment. And what dependency confusion is if you're coding, right? You have some dependencies, some libraries you're using, which are private, like they don't exist on a public repository. If I was able to publish a dependency by the same name on the public repository, say npm or pypy rubygems, your software builds may get confused and it may pull in my dependency over yours. So if I wrote malware with the same, and I use for the malware name, I use the name of the private dependency, my malware gets pulled then automatically into your build.
That's right. So just by the version numbers that they publish, they publish a greater version number, so it can grab theirs. Just that simple.
And it didn't stop there. Funny thing was, like, ever since this news broke, right? Like within 72 hours later, like at Sonatype, we refresh our our dashboard, and there's like 300 plus packages now. Like everybody is like imitating this. They want to win a bug bounty. Everybody's researching it. So this kept happening. You can see the timeline, like 5,000, 8,000, 10,000, and up until today we have I want to make sure I'm not bragging about this, so that's why I ran these numbers, but like over 40,000 packages. This includes dependency confusion, suspicious packages, and some of these are malicious packages. So almost like a big boom. It kind of started with this, now it's scattered.
Yeah, these still every day we still see this, and like you mentioned, some of these are research purposes, but some of these go after some real sensitive information. They take your credentials,
Exactly.
right? You take your shadow file, and we have a great example right here.
Yeah, this one, I mean, you can see what it's doing, but it just steals your, bash history, list of commands you've run, your shadow files, which can have, your hash passwords and stuff, and like launch reverse shells. So Oh, this is funny. Did you see NPM's recent disclosure? I mean, they released a blog post, but it was like there were three things buried in this blog post. Okay, it wasn't just one blog.
Yeah.
So
And it kind of made reference to the previous hijacks we talked about before as well.
yeah. The funny thing is there are like three things going on in that blog post. Let me just start with first. Private NPM package names were being leaked from NPM's replicate server during routine maintenance. Now, exact cause is not known, but say if you had like private packages, their names were being leaked. Their contents were not being leaked, but that doesn't matter, right? If I know your private dependencies, I have a pretty good chance at succeeding at dependency hijacks and post something malicious like this, like targeting your company. People have done this before, and this particular attacker targeted Amazon, Zillow, Lyft, so on.
And with dependency confusion, now everybody knew how to do this.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So many copycats, and well, good thing GitHub, took note of it. GitHub owns npm, just for everyone's knowledge, and they fixed it. And in the same blog post was buried like a security vulnerability disclosure too. That up until earlier this month, anybody could publish a new version of any npm package. So, pretty serious supply chain bug. Thankfully, they fixed it. There's no evidence so far that it's been exploited.
Yeah, that's huge. That was apparently disclosed to them, through the programs they run. So that's good. And they also advise, which is also good. Always, all your things use two-factor authentication.
Exactly. That's the third part. So GitHub is advising all the npm developers to add two-factory. Yeah. Third aspect of some of the breaches we've seen is like just misconfigured tools, buckets, file shares, something which kind of sort of the miscellaneous stuff. So 2 million records from a no-fly watch list was exposed. Now, the researcher who came across this, Bob Diachenko, at first he didn't know what he was looking, but he's seeing like JSON records like exposed on this web server, and like 2 million entries with like first name, last name, citizenship, select the indicator. It basically looked like a no-fly list, okay? But no-fly list, I mean, it doesn't mean the hack or the leak itself happened on the DHS or FBI server, right? Because no-fly lists could be distributed to airlines, private contractors. They could be uh, cached by anyone. This one was found on an exposed Elastic server or cluster no password. Uh, yeah, and this was indexed by public search engines, IoT search engines, I should say. And it was really this one field, TSC ID, which gave Daichenko hints that maybe it refers to terrorist screening center. So it took DHS 2 weeks to identify what server was causing this, but they did take this offline.
Again, something as simple as maybe a misconfiguration or a default configuration, an exposed cluster with no password. There should be nothing exposed with no password on the internet. As soon as you expose something, there's bots that just start scanning everything and bombarding.
Yeah. There's just so many examples. I wish we could fit them, but like this theme keeps recurring. And this one was another example, like Windows 10 package manager, right? So Windows 10 released winget, a stable version of winget, which is Windows 10 package manager, and anybody can publish packages to winget. The way it works is you sort of submit a pull request to winget's GitHub, and then they accept it, or some bots do the checking. But the funny part was you could publish duplicate packages. So say official like Videoland VLC player, which is massively popular, it already exists. You could publish like the exact package called VLC player, but now with only half of the content. So like partial or corrupted content. So you could overwrite the existing package. This kind of broke many packages, right? Some were duplicates, others were just like broken or corrupted. So this demonstrated the threats to integrity and security of the system.
Yeah, this was definitely big. Not controlling the duplicates and just being able to upload.
Yeah. Again, I'll go over this quick, but like GitHub Actions, automated tool which you can integrate with your repositories. It was abused to mine cryptocurrency. And I think the best part, Juan, about this attack, you don't have to accept the pull request. I can just make a pull request to your repository and GitHub Actions will execute it. So I can abuse your resources to mine cryptocurrency.
The power of actions. That's That's crazy. Just by submitting a PR. Wow.
Yeah, then you don't
And
know what
anybody
to
can
do
submit
there.
a PR.
So what can we do about it? How to prevent supply chain attacks? Because I think a lot of questions will be about this. Well, let's focus on like the basics of it. First thing is like having a software bill of materials. What it means is knowing what's inside your code, and it doesn't mean just having a list of components, right? Because with dependency confusion attack, we saw my component can have the same name as yours, bigger version number, the same, doesn't matter, but it's not enough. So you also need to have like the hashes, uh, some sort of logic in there to verify integrity. There are different SBOM standards, Cyclone, DX. There's one more not coming to me, but yeah, you should look into those. And yeah, this one we obviously like apply the latest updates and patches. That sound advice, but not quite anymore, because with like SolarWinds and with password state manager compromise, it was the updates that compromise users, not lack thereof. So yes, please install updates, right? But as we've seen with these hijacks, UA-parser-js, COA-RC, make sure like the updates you're getting, they are free of malicious code. So you have to verify the integrity, and you can't do this all manually. And that's why you need some kind of automated D-binary analysis or something that can just spot malicious activity upfront. So
And you also need to be able to, you need tools that can be able to just not do a basic scan of what you have, but also dig through obfuscated and minified code, which is pretty much the standard with any malware we see and with any attack.
yeah, very, very true, Juan. And we've also seen this malicious code hidden in images, audio files, like steganography techniques. So that's when I need some manual research or intervention, I would
Of
say.
course, there's always there. I think there's always the need for that, right? All tools are great, but you need manual research or intervention. You need people that go in, analyze all those results, and then make decisions, do all that. And that is just an addition, right? In addition to all the other tools that you need to have in there to get your basic perimeter security in place.
Very true. Hit the nail on the head. Yes, you still need basic perimeter controls, but I mean, none of this is substitute, as we say, like adopt like a defense and depth security kind of approach. So yeah, you just never know what control may fail you. So it's best to be as intensive as possible. So more and more companies are employing cloud native environments. Following Kubernetes or employing Docker containers, they have advantages. But again, like as we learned from CodeCov incident, right, the credentials were exposed due to a misconfigured. Well, actually, it was a Docker creation process script, I should say. But still, like, make sure your containers are secure. If attackers do manage to breach your containers, make sure there's like a layer 7 firewall or some kind of a preventative measure in place that can abort those connections from progressing forward. Okay, another thing is like remediating vulnerabilities, right? There's like automated vulnerability detection. You can ingest feeds, but like this, the volume is just too large. Like CVE advisories are coming in every day. I mean, Juan, you see these, right? Like being a
Yeah,
security.
it's just huge. Impossible to keep up with if you're just gonna run through all of these, and then you could also get a lot of false positives too. If you're just
They're
gonna,
not accurate. Yeah, exactly. How many times have we corrected the advisories?
oh, so many times, they it's very easy for them to get a version range wrong specifically, or sometimes even we even see it very, it's not as often, but it does happen that they even point, maybe an advisory references the wrong ID number, right? Or they're pointing to the wrong internal advisory from the project. So it's a lot of confusion there.
No, very true. Of course, like our products, we make sure we have all these vulnerabilities, we correct them, and we have what Juan earlier talked about, the automated malware detection system. Uh, so the way we detect these malicious packages, I'll give you a little bit of the secret sauce. Basically, every time a new package is published, right, on npm pypy, we look for like about 60 red flags or signals that could indicate something is suspicious or malicious. And this criteria keeps sort of evolving, but there are things like, the history of the package. Is this an absolutely new package or new version of an existing credible package? The author's history, is that person new? Is So things like that, the timestamps, and that's how we determine if something looks suspicious or not. And of course, we scan the code inside too. So of course, this needs a mix of both, as security research, manual intervention, as well as automation.
That's right. Everything gets flagged, and then we manually go into and look at it and determine, is this in fact something malicious? Is this for research purposes, or is this legitimate code?
Yeah, yeah. So I think I'll skip the markety bits just because I'm really like keen on answering questions. But I mean, feel free to check out this, our supply chain management products. Like there's all kinds of solutions available, right from your source control to your build stage. Yeah. So I think because we have like about 15 minutes, I think this would be a good time to take questions. What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at our questions. So before we actually go into the questions from our Q&A channel here, we did talk in a little bit about what drives these authors, right? These malicious authors to publish
Good.
this malware, to make those attacks. But what do you think, Axe? What do you think is their motivation to create this malicious code, to go and do these supply chain attacks that affect so many people? What's their motive?
Honestly, I've seen like many motives before. It's not just about money, because many times I've seen like some packages, like we saw like about 5,000 packages, were published to npm and pypi just with the intention of spreading awareness, like sort of a vigilante style attack. Very interesting. It wasn't malicious, it was just spreading awareness. But I've also seen like spammers abusing these repositories to post like pirated links to movies, free software, all that stuff. How about you? What do you think?
I definitely think that's part of it. And I also think there's another factor. Maybe this is the hacker in me speaking, but there's also that thrill of knowing you're capable of doing something, right? This is definitely no excuse to do,
Yeah.
commit any criminal act. But just, I mean, and if you do it in good intentions, in a controlled environment, you're going to these websites that let you hack and to learn. It's really cool to just do something because you can, and know that you're able to. So that plays maybe to your ego.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I would say, like with motivation, I mean, didn't you also see that? I mean, it was a skid ransomware, but it did have mechanism to like demand money and stuff, right?
Yes, absolutely. I guess that money is always a factor in there. Whether it's the ultimate factor or not, I think it plays a role most of the times.
Absolutely, because I feel like whenever something happens, people always go like, "Oh, it's they did it for the money." But I mean, we've seen many themes like spammers. Some were just outright malicious. They were out to just, as one said, because I can do what I can. They execute malicious code. Spammers, vigilante activists posting these packages. Yeah.
A lot
Anything
of
else comes to your mind? A lot of motives there.
Cool. So let's maybe look at some of the questions we have here. We have William Barma. He's asking us, could you maybe give some advice in using AT&T and TK to identify relevant threats where you have security controls, monitoring, and data gaps? Okay, so AT&T is really cool. They have a whole guide on techniques, tactics, capabilities, but this is something you use when you have an advanced capability within your organization, right? You start with the basics and you build up. So what you do with these is to identify threat actors, threat groups, and potential attack vectors as well, right? You start seeing what are the techniques being used on your system. You start doing some proactive monitoring, and you start trying to detect these techniques and tactics that AT&T and CK gives us, right? But this is a proactive thing you do once you have a very mature model in your organization. What do you think, Axe?
Yeah, yeah. I think like the way you put it, it's like I can do it better. So there's a follow-up question though on ATT. TTT's helping. I think you should take that one too. I'll take the next one.
Yeah, it's asking us on top of the TTPs as a foundation, how could teams continue to evolve using additional TTPs from internal and third-party threat intelligence sources? All right, so this is complicated, but this is where you got to start innovating, creating your own models internally. But the great thing about AT&T and CK is all the TTPs it gives us. So start using that to your advantage for your team, not only for detection, but for learning, for training. And then all that's going to help you build a stronger, more mature model for proactive detection, threat hunting, right? That's the next step, threat hunting. Once you have those capabilities in place, um, you have to start doing the threat hunting and see where those TTPs apply to you, what does not, some risk modeling, and do it accordingly.
Yeah. So moving on to the next question. I mean, it's a very how to use a continuous and adaptive risk and trust assessment strategic mindset to enable prediction and prevention where feasible and deploy, detect, and respond capabilities to adjust to changing threats. It's like a question within a question. So I think like essentially what you're asking is like how to do it all. And I mean, just put simply, right? I mean, this is why you need some kind of some kind of automation, right? I mean, it's hard to do all of this manually. Like using a strategic mindset to enable prediction and prevention. That's great. It starts with like keeping track of what's going on, like because if you know like what's happening right now, as Juan said, like keep up your threat hunting efforts, then you can predict what may happen tomorrow. For example, we've been analyzing malware like since like 2019 or 2020, time and time again. And one of the predictions we made was like I had said that maybe this will become a attack vector, that will be exploited by ransomware groups. I never really thought my prediction might get materialized because I don't know, there could be more efficient ways. But we did see ransomware eventually, right? Juan analyzed that one.
We
So
started seeing that, yeah.
yeah, it's important to be aware of current trends because from now, then you can pivot to what may happen tomorrow. And same thing with library hijacks. Nothing new; it has happened before. But I guess like the sequence of how this whole situation went. We showed you the timelines and stuff that one, a few packages which are the testing ground for the real attack, they get published, followed by this UA parser JS library getting hijacked. And then within days, other two popular libraries get hijacked. So it's like those patterns. And once you have a good idea of those, you can devise tools, you can devise scripts, a simple script. You don't even need to buy a vendor product. Of course, it's better to buy a product from us. But I mean, you can devise solutions if you're aware of it. It's just the challenge lies in to manage all of this manually and the volume of data and vulnerabilities. I think, yeah, so automation and detect and respond capabilities, those can be built, but it's important to be aware of the threats.
Yeah, I think it's also really key, like what you just mentioned, right? To the analysis you do on all that data that comes in from your automation. Your automation is great, builds a lot of data, does it easily, fast. But then how do you analyze and how do you use that to your advantage? That's key. So you mentioned there, Axe, kind of like one of your predictions that we're going to see that ransomware and the malware and these attacks that we're starting to see, and that started to happen. We started to see that trend. Do you have any other predictions for what's coming up next? What to expect?
Mm, great question. Well, I mean, thankfully, we do see companies, adopting solutions, just like with dependency confusion, as fast as it's happening. We also see people, safeguarding themselves against it. Still seeing a lot of ransomware, and I think ransomware is tricky, even regardless of supply chain or not. And the reason I'm saying it's here to stay and grow because like the kind of people they're targeting, you may have never heard of these companies, like $10 billion like shipping company. You may not have heard of it, but I mean that's not software supply chain, that's your manufacturing supply chain, like especially in these times. Yeah, I saw the other day another like big names not coming to me, but like big shipping company, like they got ransomed again. So those kinds of attacks we're seeing, I think those are like will continue to increase, unfortunately, because the attack vector, right, it could be just phishing, it could be simple things that people fall for. And Yeah, I think cybersecurity awareness and trainings, there are many companies who are doing it. There's Curricula, there's Ninjio, many others. So I mean, please like educate your employees to do better. Anybody can fall for it. There have been scams targeting security researchers, right? One, we posted that stuff in Google. I think Google did a blog post on it. What was it?
I don't recall who did, but we do see that quite
Yeah,
often too. It's not just unsavvy tech users.
yeah,
It's everything.
exactly. There was this big campaign targeting security researchers, random people on Twitter and stuff. So it's challenging. Awareness is just as important as automation.
Absolutely. That's also one of the reasons whenever we test malware, we get a controlled environment, we make sure we're running it, in a virtual machine elsewhere where it's controlled, where it definitely doesn't have access to the internet or any host system, because they do target us as well, right?
They do. I mean, they were taunting you on that blog post, and like when we did like curse grabber analysis, that whole campaign, they were inviting us to come to. I mean, they posted two malware packages named after like Sharma and another Sonatype. Like they were enticing us to come join their Discord and start a talk. So
That was intense. That they were really coming after you then. Even your name was coming up in those packages.
that was funny, scary slash whatever. All right, we have about 5 minutes remaining. Any other questions?
I don't see any questions in the queue, but I do want to remind everybody that today's webinar has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of the webinar, you'll be able to watch it again. We will be sending an email with a link to access the webinar on demand, and you can also find it on securityboulevard.com. Just look in the on-demand section, the webinars page, and it should be there. I'm not going to announce the winners of the 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. Our first winner is Lynn N. Congratulations. Our second winner is Clarence M. Our third winner is Alina T. And our final winner is Anton O. So congratulations to all our winners. We'll be reaching out to you via email with instructions for claiming your Amazon gift card. So please check your inbox. And if you don't see it there, please check your spam folder. One more. I'm not seeing any other questions. So for now, Axe and Juan, thank you very much for taking the time to put this presentation together and for giving us an hour of your time. It was very informative. We all appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for all this content.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Of course. Yes, I'd also like to thank the audience for their time and engagement. So for now, this is Julio Godinez signing off until next time. Be well.